Hey, how's it going? So I thought I would share an unboxing of the Penn Torque 40. So a couple months ago in August, I went on my first bluefin tuna trip out of San Diego, and a gentleman I met online was cool enough to let me borrow a bunch of gear so I didn't have to rent. And so it turned out he had some really nice stuff, and so I got to try a bunch of different gear without really knowing jack shit about any of it. And it was after the fact I was able to ask, what was that? I liked that reel, and the one that I really loved, um, and it was paired with a custom rod and everything, but was the Penn Torque 40. And I later found out, it was made in America, which I love that, and you know, it was really a workhorse. I landed 130-pound bluefin tuna in under 8 minutes from the time I set it, and this was set up to be a light rail rod. So it was actually a daytime sinker rig that I was using. It had 80-pound braid, 80 or 100-pound mono. I'm not sure what top shot he had on there. And then I had put on a small piece of 40-pound fluoro in the daytime for sinker rig. And I actually forgot to cut it off at night. And I landed that 130-pounder in under 8 minutes on this tank of a reel. It just so happens to be made in Philadelphia. And this is my first time getting my hands on it out of the box here, and it feels great. One thing I'll say is I also bought an Avid for my 40-pound setup, and I'm using this to fill the same slot that I said I used it for. One thing that stands out right away is the surface is much smoother. Like this lever and all of these pieces here on this Avid are much more sharp edged. So this has more of a refined feel. For the amount of line that it holds, which is a ton, it holds 565 yards of 80-pound. More than enough for most scenarios. That's why it also can. I'm going to use it as my main rail rod until later I'll get a V6 for like the cow class. But based on the experience I had with it, this thing kicked ass on a big one. I also reeled in a 30-pounder that was foul hooked, which was even bigger of a fight. The free spool on this is just fantastic. As you see, it keeps cruising. I have a couple fathoms, and they are great for the free spool for the money, and a lot of the same components. They're made in China. But look at that. It's still cruising. It's almost like no resistance. I'll let you know when it stops. So it has a high spec line capacity. I have small hands, and so the narrow spool is really nice because I can work it on the rail. It stays nice and balanced, and I can also guide the line back on as I'm fighting the fish on the rail. It's still spinning. Look at that. It's fantastic free spool. And stainless steel internal gears on it. It's all forged aluminum. It's still going. It's just about to stop. So one difference between the casing of it is it's a machined aluminum versus forged from the fathom there. It just stopped. That's wild. It stops you at full, and you have to push a button to go further into sunset, which is nice because it has 40 pounds of drag, which is more than you. The drag wars with reels are kind of getting to the point with how stereo wattage was when 20, 25 years ago, where it's just it's becoming more than you'll ever need. You don't need 5,000 watts amplifier in your car. It already sounds like aluminum cans in the back when it's 1,000 watts. Well, it's kind of like this. 40. If you're setting your strike at your drag at 25 to 30% of the braking strength of the line, 40 pounds, 20, that's a 160-pound line at 25%. You're never going to break. You can't even break 80-pound line. Honestly, I tugged the shit out of 80-pound line, and I've talked to guys that have fished entire careers. They've never broke 80-pound. I don't see much use in going higher than, 100-pound braid. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but 100-pound braid and that's 25, 30 pounds of drag you need. You can get that out of something less expensive or powerful than this. But needless to say, this thing is a beast. It has a lot of torque. It lives up to its name. Some of the specs, though, beyond that, it's a 5-to-1 gear ratio in high, which is a little lower than the Abbott's 6-to-1. But you do get more torque when it's a lower high gear ratio. I found I didn't even need to put it into low, but one of the deckhands did one time for me, and the low is 2.5, so it's exactly half. It's quite the winch. To go into low, you push this button on the side here, and then twist like that to pop it out. So it's something you kind of have to intentionally do, but you could do it without taking your hand off the crank if you had to. I suppose the coming out of the low isn't as likely or as feasible, but I love this handle. This handle fits my hands perfectly. I love the narrow structure of it. So yeah, it's a sealed Duradrag system to reduce salt, water, and hesitation getting inside of it. And yeah, it's about $6.59 retail, made in Philadelphia. The Fathom 40 is probably a better deal, dollar for dollar. I went with the Abbott JX, also American made. I'm happy to pay more for a product like that. I do have, like I said, some Fathoms I got used, 15s for my 25, like my finesse and my 30-pound slot, but none of this, including the Abbott, compared to this reel. Like, this really stood out, putting in work on the deck when I didn't know anything about anything. And after researching it, I loved it even more. Happy to finally own it. It's likely going to be the last reel I own in that slot, that number 4 out of 5 slot, and it's going to function. I'm going to be going on a trip here in a couple weeks because it's still really good down there in San Diego, and I'm going to fish it again just like I did. Daytime sinker rig, nighttime rail rod, and I'm having a custom thrasher made to go with it. If you found this useful, I'm going to do more gear reviews in the future. Honest, no bias, no sponsors, and just going to keep it real. Subscribe, like, share with a friend, and thanks for checking it out.